I'd have to say I met Cornette at an autograph signing sometime before or right before the time I went to WWF at the time in 99, or not long after that. There was a time I knew Jim before I went to OVW. And obviously you say Jim Cornette, Rip Rogers, Danny Davis, and probably a host of other people that I never saw behind the scenes. This was definitely a team effort of everybody with the same vision. If it was people plugged in with different visions, and we can get to that because the vision of WWF, WWE at the time, started to kind of conflict, which is a pattern that's developed not only here, Deep South, FCW, to a degree, a little bit of NXT. It feels like they try to run independently of each other, of WWE. I should say more notably, WWE doesn't care. They're running their thing. But there comes a point where there is friction and there's head-butting over creative. And then, of course, Cornette is famous for saying, we booked this guy in an angle here. We let the office know, Nick Dinsmore, Doug Basham, especially Doug Basham. We have him an angle. He looks like this. You bring him up there and you just shave Doug Basham's head to see what it looks like. Then he's got to go back on OVW TV and it's all messed up. And that was the basis for Cornette's frustration. But getting back to him and being around him, Jim Cornette, he has a special place in my career history because September 10th, 1988, Midnight Express versus Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson. I've told this story before in the WSI interviews. That was the night and that match. Midnight Express, U.S. Tag Champs, Tully and Arn, NWA World Tag Team Champions. This was a house show at the Civic Center in Philadelphia. Cornette's obviously the manager. Midnight Express are babyfaces, and they win the tag team titles. They unify, not so unify, but they collect the World Tag Team titles while they still have the U.S. Tag Champs or the tag titles as champions. And I walked home from the Civic Center that night saying, I want to be a professional wrestler. You fast forward years, and this is why I think it was at a convention or a signing because I approached Jim and very respectively said to Jim, hey, I want to tell you something, that you might not know. And I mentioned all that stuff. And I go, you're a part of the reason that I decided to become a professional wrestler. And he grabbed my shoulders and shook me and he said, do not blame me for that. And our other joke was every time I saw him after that, and he had moved back to Kentucky from Stanford, remember how much he liked Connecticut? I always go up to him and I go, hey, I just got a text from JR. He said he needs you to move back to Connecticut. Get over here. He tried to play choke me. So no slaps though.
Oh. Well, you weren't Santino Marella.
That's true. But who is?
No. With Jim, was he just basically a jack of all trades for OVW then? Because I'm assuming he was booking. I'm assuming he was giving direction to everybody.
Well, let's look at it this way. I think jack of all trades because his experience, he's one of the owners of the company. Like I said, Danny Davis, Rip Rogers. I think Rip was mainly just training. But of course, he had creative output because if somebody's not ready, you're not going to plug them into TV matches and programs and angles and storylines. Jim also resides in Louisville, Kentucky. So his connections for sponsorships, for collaborations, to get buildings, to book, you put the Jim Cornette name locally there, running a wrestling promotion, you kind of already got your foot in the door. Danny Davis, another one, resident there for however many decades. Between the two of them, you could really have a business. And for a while, they were a full-time wrestling company. And I'm not so sure about today, but I know Al wanted to make it another full-time wrestling company with TV.
He wanted to make it a WWE developmental again. I don't know why WWE wouldn't go for it. Is it just because it wouldn't be 100% under their control?
I believe that OVW is better at training wrestlers to become professional wrestlers than WWE itself. And you can't have that. They're God. You can't go higher than that. They know everything. And I do believe also Al's at a point in his life and career where he wants to do it his way and make it on his own. So I'm not sure what they do now, but I know they have a lot of collaborations. I know one thing that Al did that was one of the most, how should I say, one of the most positive things you can do for a wrestling school. He got accredited So it's a trade school now, it's a vocational school. It's something that gives legitimacy. I think give qualify for student loans and grants and stuff. It's recognized in the state of Kentucky as an actual educational institution, as it should be. So he's evolved OVW more into the real world and getting the benefits of the real world with the wrestling school, the TV product, and everything. And I think the way Al thinks is if I can get every piece of this company to have legitimate credibility in the real world, it's only going to bring more sponsors, more people, and of course, more students and people I can create wrestlers out of.
Going back to Jim, so early 2004, I think Johnny Ace, John Laurinaitis, if he's not senior vice president of talent relations or whatever the thing was, he soon would be, and he was working under Jim at this time. Was it obvious any frustrations Jim was having with WWE or Johnny interfering with OVW business?
I mean, if you know Jim Cornette, he's not going to wait until he's pulled aside in a room or he goes into a room privately to give his feelings, especially about Johnny Ace and the WWE. And that was part of the thing I was talking about. Developmental has a pattern of they start out and it's big cooperation and collaboration between WWE and the independent or WWE and the developmental territory. But I feel like not egos, but business plans and all that stuff, maybe a little bit of ego and pride get in the way. And that's when people start butting heads. And Cornette's very much a type A personality, a person that needs to be in control, has a vision, goes with it. And that's why pairing him with Danny and Rip was perfect. You have three people with like minds and like visions. But then Cornette's always been criticized for not wanting to evolve. And that's a trick word too. Some things like with wrestling, it evolves in a different wrapper, a different presentation. But the good guy versus bad guy, the storylines and everything have always been rehashed with your basic blood feud, title run, Cody's story. These are all very old school Memphis and before type of presentations. You just put a new coat of paint on them. And I don't think WWE and Jim Cornette ever got to that middle ground where they understood we both want the same thing, but we're just completely on opposite ends of the spectrum about how to do it.
Apart from you winding him up about sending him back to Connecticut, how would he interact with you, or what would his role be interacting with you? Would he give you the finish of the matches you were having? Because I know you'd wrestle, I can find 4 matches, John Hennigan and Standing Thunder. I don't really know Standing Thunder, his name. But you had a couple of matches in 2004, and you lost both of them as well. So, I mean, you were gracious enough to say, you could have just said, well, I'm WWE, I've been there for many years, ECW, blah, blah, blah. And he said, no, I'm more than happy to lose. So who's coming up to you? I'm presuming Jim would say, would you mind?
No, I went up to Jim. I went up to Jim and Danny and said that. Like everybody else who ever came in and, the whole thing was about putting these people over to set them up for success in WWE. And the John Hennigan match, that's the one that kind of birthed, in a way, Eminem, because Joey Mercury was involved in that match as well. And I did a Jim Cornette finish for Jim Cornette in that, to do that. Do we get right into it now?
Oh, for the Eminem thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I've got a couple more follow-ups with Jim, but yeah, why not?
Okay, so like the beauty about that, and that's why I really did go to developmental, besides helping the talent out, creative control, I could do things my way. Sure, they would like for me to put these guys over, no big deal. I went to them first and volunteered, and I asked, can I do it this way? So I was doing stuff with John Hennigan. We brawled on the outside. He had just, either he and Mercury or him alone, had injured somebody, or they did something where they blinded. It's like they did it like an injury angle with somebody. And I came out and I started off hot on John, beating him up, putting him into the announce table, took out a mop and threw it in his face. And did all the little bit of ECW stuff without being too out there. We only went outside for a little bit. But the finish of the match was your classic Memphis hot coffee thrown in my face by Joey Mercury. And I'm getting rolled up by John Hennigan. But I did say before that match that these two guys were working together. They said they wanted to team up. They were hoping to be a team. For all I know, WWE already knew that they were going to team them up. I don't know. But I was trying to present what they wanted to be on WWE TV together. It's like one of those things of, oh, hey, you're already together as a tag team. You're going to be a tag team. Ha. So we'll mix both of them together for everybody out there. So it wasn't like I said to Jim Cornette, these guys are going to be Eminem and they're going to wear fur coats and, oh, that girl Melina, make them the manager. All it was just kind of dropping the hint to let WWE think it's their idea to put them together. That was my little trick. John and Joey were awesome to work in every regard. Never got to work Joey in a full match, but John was really, really talented.
Even in 2004, because I think for a while he was pegged as, the tough enough guy, like Maven was.
He's pegged as kind of goofy and just doing the flippy flops and everything like that. But when you present it with the entrance and the Eminem gimmick, and then, of course, he did the, John Morrison, which basically Jim Morrison music and the Doors and stuff, and recreating that, his moveset was always the same. So it just proves if you can connect the character and care about them, love them, hate them, they don't have to change much about the actual wrestling they're doing.
A couple more things about Cornette before we move on. Was his general demeanor in 2004, 2005 might be a different story, actually, but in 2004, he's, for what most people will imagine, he's a caricature, he's always, bright red and about to explode kind of thing. But is he actually just mostly easy to get on with and generally happy to be around?
I would probably put him in a Rip Rogers category. If you understand the personality, you're fine. If you take it too personal, if you take the presentation too personally, or you think he's yelling at you or whatever, he might be yelling at you, but you have to listen to the actual message that he's given in the education or the tips. And I've always gotten along fine with him. He would make an ECW joke here and there, and I would turn around and say, I'm not telling you to do it, but have you ever seen my stuff? I wear Daisy Dukes in a half shirt, dude. Do you really think I'm a garbage wrestler? And then it's like funny doesn't make money. And I was like, okay, well, you might have a point there too. Although the BWO...
He came from Memphis.
Okay, although I said to him, well, those BWO t-shirt sales say different. And he goes, but you never saw a dime of it. I was like, okay, we're even here. Okay, let's agree to disagree on things.
I like that funny doesn't draw money, but he was from Memphis, which was one of like the biggest comedy... it was all funny though. You know what I mean? It was like organically funny rather than, like contrived nonsense funny. But yeah, Memphis is one of the funniest territories out there. Yeah,
I don't know do you think that was the basis, just off topic, but on topic since it's Jim, we're talking about Santino Marella, which everybody knows the story. Do you think that's why he had such a problem with Santino and just didn't like him because he always said funny don't make money?
Okay, the story is for people who don't know, is that he slapped Santino Marella because he was like in the beginners class in OVW at the time. He might have even still been playing like a Russian or something as a character. And he was barely on... I'm not sure he was on TV at that. OVW TV. He might have just been a trainee. Anyway, the boogeyman was rushing through the crowd. Everybody else knew to, be scared and run away or, don't hurt me kind of thing. And Santino just sat there just smiling or whatever he was. And then Jim Cornette was so upset he slapped him. And then a call to HR and then Jim Cornette had to go or sell his shares to Danny Davis. So I think, an elephant doesn't forget, and that's why he doesn't like Santino.
Oh, that's a bit more. There's a lot more stakes than just say funny don't make money with that. You're right.